Exodus 16 is an interesting story. It happens right after this transition where the Israelites have been delivered out of Egypt. So if you're not familiar with that particular story, there are this group of people that God has chosen to be his people. It's one of the smallest nations and groups of people that are out there, and that is the Israelites. And the Israelites had gone through a process of different forefathers, and in that process, they landed in Egypt in a time that God was using Egypt to provide for his people. They stayed there longer than they should have, and there were a number of years that they spent. And over time, the original Pharaoh was no longer there, and the new one felt very challenged, very insecure as it related to the prosperity of the Israelites. So what he did is he began to enslave them. He enslaved them because he was afraid of what they would do if they began to step out in their own power and their own authority under their God. And so over time, Pharaoh began to make this enslavement more significant, and he would increase the work and increase the labor to such a point that the Israelites said, you know what, we can't take it anymore. And they begin to cry out to God for their freedom. Did you know sometimes God will use difficulty and tragedy and challenge in your life? I didn't say he'll cause it, but I said he will use it in order to bring you to a place of desperation so that we begin to cry out and have affection for what is our God-given purpose. See, the Israelites were okay for a period when things were comfortable. But the thing is God did not want them to assimilate with the nation of Egypt. He wanted them to begin to step out and rule and reign in the earth and allow God's covenant and his glory to begin to cover the earth as the water covered the sea. But they couldn't do that as long as they remained under the government and the rule of the Egyptians. So what happened is God permitted a thing to get bad in order for them to realize who they were. And so they stepped out and they began to cry out for God. And as they cry out for God, it says that God hears their cry. And God uses a man named Moses to begin to deliver them out of Egypt. Now, Moses' story is an interesting story in and of itself. See, I told you that Pharaoh had begun to persecute the Israelites and make their labor for them much more difficult. But there was a point where he was so much in fear of what they would become, he released a decree in the land to kill any Israelite male that was born so that they could not continue to populate as a nation. And in that process, what happens is Moses' mother puts him in a basket in the river and sends him down the river, and Pharaoh's daughter happens to see Moses and is moved with compassion, realizing what's happened, and takes Moses in and raises him in the household of Pharaoh. Why am I taking so much time right now to set this up for you? Because where we're going, you have to begin to understand the context in order to be positioned to experience the truth that we're about to encounter. And it's this: why was it so significant that God would use and create a space for Moses to be used to be the leader to free the Israelites out of Egypt and take them into the promised land? And this is what I believe it is. It's because Moses would actually be raised in Pharaoh's house as a prince. Though Moses was a Jew and an Israelite, he was raised as a prince. All the while the Israelites were raised as slaves. What God was doing was creating a person that would be free internally in order to free a people externally. In other words, before we can really set people free of something they're experiencing externally or internally, we have to get free too. See, your freedom isn't just about you, though it's great it starts with you, it's important. As Miranda said, it's imperative that all of the things that happen in life, they start in the home. It's great that God does a work in you, but he does a work in you so that he can work through you and impact and change the people around you. So God gets Moses and he raises up a man who gets free from the slave mentality, who gets free from a poverty mentality, who gets free from this orphan spirit, and he begins to set him and position him in a house of royalty. Why? Because it's a picture of what God was going to try to do in the Israelites. They have a heavenly Father who is the King of all kings and the Lord of all lords. Did you know that your Father is the King of all kings, the Lord of all lords? He is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the beginning and the end. He is the author and finisher of your faith. This is your Father. You are royalty. You are all princesses and princes in the kingdom. Your heritage is not of that of the natural thing. It is of the supernatural reality that God is your Father. And so what happens is God raises up in Moses a man who is free from the slave mentality. And he delivers them out of slavery into the promised land. But what happens along the journey is this is what goes on. God brings plagues to the Egyptians. Eventually the Israelites are freed. They get to the Red Sea and they think all is lost. Moses has this moment where he raises a staff, he splits the sea, maybe you know the story, and they go through it on dry land. The sea falls and the Egyptians are washed away, right? This is a picture of baptism. It's amazing, isn't it? Pretty cool. But then what happens is the Israelites, they experience these great signs, wonders, and miracles, all 10 plagues. They see the Red Sea split, they walk on dry land, and then one of the first things they do is they start complaining, oh, we don't have water now. We don't have water anymore. So then Moses hears from the Lord. He takes a log, throws it into the stream, and all of a sudden what was salty now becomes sweet and the water's good to go. And so God does another miracle. It's amazing. Then we get to Exodus 16. Are you ready? It says this in verse 1. They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin. Now it's not talking about sin, this is a place, all right? Which is between Elim and Sinai. And on the 15th day of the second month after they had departed from the land of Egypt, so they were not long out of Egypt at this point, the whole congregation of people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the people of Israel said to them, would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Did you notice what happened? The Israelites just experienced this mighty work of God, right? We have 10 signs and 10 wonders. Then we have the miracle of the Red Sea. Then we have the miracle of the water being turned so that it's drinkable. And this all happens within a 30 to 45 day period. Now they're at this point where they're hungry and they're still not getting the message. Now they're at the point where they're grumbling against God to Moses and saying, it was better for us to be slaves in Egypt, where at least our meat pots were full and we had bread as much as we want and we could die with full bellies, to be in the wilderness hungry and die out here. God just did all of this stuff to bring us to this point. What's being revealed in this moment is freedom will reveal what slavery conceals. Your freedom will reveal what slavery concealed. Let me give you a story and help you understand what I mean by that, and then we'll build upon it. I remember early on, my wife and I, we met in high school, and we decided pretty early on in conversation about what the family plan was, okay? And I'm a planner. I don't know if you know that about me, but I'm a planner. As I'm getting older, I plan a little less, but I'm still a planner, all right? Now, in that process, we began to lay out what the goal was. And as we laid those things out, I knew for me personally, okay, I was gonna finish college. I was gonna get a job that could sustain us. We were gonna buy a house, and then I wanted to have kids. It was that order. I'm not saying that's gotta be the order for you. Some of that needs to be the order, but my process was different, all right? So this is how I did it. And so what happened was I stuck to the plan. As I went and I did school, I graduated, I got a job that could sustain us. We had a house, and as soon as I had the job, I went home that afternoon and I said, baby, it's time, we're having kids. And she said, what? I said, it's time to have kids. This is what the plan was. This is what I wanted to do. So it only took me a few weeks to get her on board, all right? And we were there, and we decided to have kids. We had been married 5 years at this point. And it's this exhilarating journey for me as she's pregnant. It's exciting, all right? It's a lot of fun. I realize, I said for me, I think it was cool for her too, but I understand, ladies, you guys are carrying a different side of that than we are. But we go through this journey, and then we get to the point where it's like, okay, she's about to have this baby. And so we get to the hospital, and we go through all the process, and she births this beautiful baby boy, which, by the way, was a roller coaster of emotions. Nobody told me when they come out, their head looks like that. As the head was coming out, I'm like, oh, there's this cute little head. And I'm like, oh, there's more. And then when they come out, it's like, where's the beanie? My baby needs a beanie now, because I don't know if he's all right. I mean, I'm looking over. Thank God my brother-in-law came after the fact, and they were still, doing their thing. And I said, dude, I think there's something wrong. He said, no, they come out like that. I'm like, oh, thank God. I thought we just birthed E.T., y'all. I didn't know. He's cute in the face. Anyways, I'm going to leave it alone. He's great now. But there's just things you don't know in these experiences. You're experiencing it for the first time, and people don't tell you these things, right? And I'll tell you, this whole point, I've been getting ready. We've been getting the house ready. The walls are painted. Everything's in its place. Listen, at this point, we were blessed to bring a baby up when they got all the gadgets. They got gadgets for gadgets. Did you know now you ain't even got to put the butt paste on with your fingernail. You could just take a little thing, a paddle, and it'll do it. You ain't even got to get your hands dirty. It's awesome, y'all. We grew up in a great time. I thought I was ready. I was good to go. And we get in the hospital, and they take care of the baby, and they do all of the stuff, and everything's being monitored, everything's being cared for, and diapers are being changed, and all this stuff happens, and the next day rolls around, and everybody's good to go, and they look at me, and they say, well, do you have your car seat ready? I said, well, yeah. We have a car seat ready. They said, okay, it's time to go home. And I go, home? What do you mean, home? Like, shouldn't there have been a training course? Like, I've been here for 48 hours and you couldn't have put something on a TV to tell me what I do when we're out of here? Because this whole time, doctors and nurses have been looking at him and looking at her and making sure everything was okay. And I've been chilling on the sofa, y'all. My father-in-law brought me the pond house. Like, I was eating steak. This is the greatest thing ever. But then this whole process is done and I go, hold on a minute. I am now responsible for this human life. And I didn't really talk about it a lot then, but let me be honest, like, all of the insecurity starts coming. It's like, man, I didn't have the greatest biological father, and I'm not here to tear that man down. He has his own things he's working through, and that's okay. But I'm like, man, I don't want to repeat that. Like, God, am I going to be okay? Like, when he goes to bed at night, like, I'm checking him every 5 seconds. I put my finger in front of his nose. I'm like, is he breathing? Like, they whine all day and now they're sleeping. It's like they're not making any noise. What's going on? Is he alive? Like, have I done it wrong? And all of these questions start coming in. And what happened is in this place, I had all these restrictions and confinements, and people were telling me what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And I felt okay and I felt secure, but I couldn't build a home in a hospital, right? No, so they gave me this freedom. They're like, get out and go do your thing and you're free now. You're free of all of this stuff. And then all of a sudden it was revealed on the inside of me that I had all of these insecurities I didn't even know about. And so often this is what happens with us. This is what's happened in the story of the Israelites. Is when they were in Egypt, all of their complaints were about Egypt to God because they were getting all of this external pressure and this oppression was upon them externally. And then they get free from all of that external pressure and they get totally free from their slavery, only to reveal that in their hearts they're complete captives. Why? Because when they get out of there, their grumbling doesn't stop. They still feel poor. They still feel broken. See, in Egypt, they felt all of their lack was because they were oppressed, but when they got into the wilderness, they realized that they had an issue with an orphan spirit. They didn't know they had a father who loved them. They didn't know that they had a father who cared for them, who was delivering them, who heard their cry. And so this freedom that they were experiencing was revealing all along that their issue wasn't completely external. It was internal. There was things on the inside of their hearts that were broken. And so God creates this situation, and it says this in chapter 15, before we get to 16, it says, I'm gonna give you my word, and I'm gonna do some things, and then I'm gonna test that. I'm gonna test the Israelites. And so what he does in chapter 16 is he says, I'm gonna provide for you. I hear your cry, and I hear you saying you're hungry, so I'm gonna provide manna. And manna's gonna fall. And manna fell for them. And then the instruction was they were never to collect more than they needed for that day. The only exception was on the 6th day. They were allowed to gather what they needed for the next day, because the next day would be a day of Sabbath and a day of rest. And so what God did in this moment is he created an environment that would allow them to experience and grow in trust with him, by making them dependent each day upon what it was that he would begin to bring forth. And this environment revealed, this freedom revealed the things on the inside of them that had been concealed by their oppression. Because the Egyptians would feed them. Why? Because, well, they had to work. They need to have full bellies. But they had a survival mentality. They had a survival mentality, and they were not thriving. This is what I want to highlight to you today is, in Exodus 16, there's this comparison between two ideas. And one of these ideas is what we're going to talk about briefly today is this. It's what I'm calling the manna mindset. The manna mindset. This is the invitation of the kingdom way, to be dependent upon the Lord for our provision, that he takes care of us, that he deeply loves us, that he'll provide for us, and that we don't have to worry and toil about what's happening over here. That our freedom can actually be permission to experience his truth and his provision in every area of life. But this manna mindset wars against the poverty mindset. So this is it. The poverty mindset is a fear-driven way of thinking that views life through the lens of scarcity, measuring security by what is stored, controlled, or accumulated rather than trust in God. The manna mindset is one that trusts daily provision instead of stockpiling security. The manna mindset is measured by the abundance of God's faithfulness rather than having full barns, and a mindset where his presence is more valuable than the provision itself. Two very different ways of thinking. If we get here to the second part in Exodus 16, verses 4 through 5, it says this. Then the Lord said to Moses, behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. See, abundance in the kingdom is not measured by what you have stored up. You need to hear me, because this is going to challenge every natural way you have of thinking. It, at its core, challenges Western culture. Abundance in the kingdom is not measured by what you have stored up. It's measured by what you sustain through trust in God. Your abundance is not about your bank account. This is why you can be rich, you can have a big bank account, houses, cars, and have it all, businesses, be a multimillionaire, and still have the poverty spirit. Which is why you're in supreme insecurity. You feel like you need to constantly compete. You feel like resources are always scarce. You're worried from one moment to the next of whether this is gonna get done and that's gonna get done. Has nothing to do with your bank account. It has everything to do with the brokenness of our own spirit as it relates to trusting God. See, the issues that the Israelites were facing, and again, I wanna compare this really quickly, because I'm realizing I haven't drawn this connection yet. Is the poverty spirit and the orphan spirit often work together. What do I mean by that? This idea of being orphaned, it's meaning I don't have family, I don't have home, I don't have a place of belonging. I don't have covering. I don't have protection. I don't have people in my corner to begin to come alongside with me. It's this idea of independence for protection because I can't count on anybody else, so I'm just gonna do it myself. That whole idea right there, because a lot of us, we wrestle with that one. I don't know that I can trust people to do this or have people do this thing over here, so I'm just gonna take care of it, and I can't depend on such and such to do that. I see this break up marriages a lot, where people in their relationship, maybe the wife, maybe the husband, they have this thing, well, I'm just gonna do it, you can't do it. Why? Because they've been so used to being independent their entire life, they don't know how to depend upon someone else. That's the manifestation of an orphan spirit, of not understanding how to walk in family, not understanding that there is safety in interdependency. Interdependency is not a bad thing. Total dependency can become unhealthy as it relates to people, but as it relates to God, that is the only way. You understand? So in this moment, the Israelites are really beginning to wage and begin to war with this tension of they feel like I have a perceived need and perceived lack, and I need to do what I can to begin to protect and guard myself against disappointment or against that lack. And so what God does is he's presenting a moment for them to make this transition in their heart from being dependent upon their own performance. That's what Egypt taught them. If you do, and meet these expectations, then you're okay and I'll continue to provide for you. That's what Egypt did. I'll provide meat for your stew pots and bread without end as long as you perform for me. Do you see that? And Israel learned to love that and find security in that and find hope in that. And the thing is, if we come to the kingdom with that same mentality, a poverty mentality, then what happens is we'll begin to enter a treadmill of performance, always feeling like what we do is never enough. It's scarce. So God sets up this situation with the manna to introduce what, again, I'm calling the manna mindset of total dependency of God's provision, which only happens when an appropriate revelation of his character and nature. So anything, this is the kingdom principle I'm gonna help you to understand in order to catch what I just said. Anything that God gives you is to reveal who he is. God's gifts are meant to point you to his heart. So why would God heal you? Because he wants to show you that he wants to be your healer. Why would God provide for you? It's because he's trying to teach you that he alone is your provider. Why would he care for even the small things that, if you're gonna be honest, you say, well, I just don't wanna burden God with that, as if your small thing could burden him. But anyways, conversation for another day. Why does he do the little things and make sure, well, like we call little and normal and ordinary? Because he's trying to show you that I care for every detail of your life. And so what God is doing in this moment with the manna is saying, listen, I want you every day to depend upon me. See, your abundance is not found by what you can hoard. What's amazing is that when God set this up, I don't know if you noticed this, but he actually gave them more than enough. If he didn't give them more than enough, then they could have never hoarded it to begin with. Did you catch that? Yet God didn't consider that wasteful. So God creates a situation with the manna, gives them more than enough, gives them the instruction to only get what they need for the day, and gives them the invitation to walk in true kingdom abundance, which we defined earlier, which is this. It's what you can sustain by trust in God. Why is that so important to get? That your abundance has nothing to do with how big your bank account is or how big your salary is. I'm talking about money now because this is where your mind's going. This helps to talk about it, but I'm talking about so much more than money, and I really hope you walk away and get that today. But it has nothing to do with how big your bank account is. It has everything to do with what you can actually do to trust him, because if we're gonna be honest, we may have a big bank account, but our security is not actually found in his provision, it's found in how big our savings account is. If there's enough here, then I can be at peace. And again, I'm not saying don't have wisdom in what you do, that's fine, but I'm saying that thing right there is not your security or your measuring stick for abundance. You don't believe me? Ask Job. He seemingly had it all, and in a moment, everything vanished. And in a moment, everything vaporized. And what happens is these moments will begin to reveal where our trust has been all along. And so Israel, under a slave mentality, under the orphan spirit, and a poverty mindset, begin to think that their performance was the way to increase, that their security was found in the provision that came from their performance. And what happens is God brings them into an environment that is completely antithetical to all of those things now. Now he's coming in and saying, at this point, your abundance is going to be found in trust. Why is that invitation and that shift so important? Do you think that there is more abundance in the provision found in our performance, or is there more abundance found in God himself? Which is it? It's God. God is able to provide for us according to his riches and glory in Christ Jesus. And so we have an opportunity as we walk this kingdom lifestyle to begin to shift our attention, our affection, our effort in what we can produce, and then work everything we can to protect and guard and hoard because we feel like we're never gonna have enough. Or we can step out and say, I can never, this is the Manna Mindset, I can never be without because God is my provider. He operates in supreme abundance. He never lacks for anything. I'm his son, I'm his daughter. Therefore, I can never lack for anything. Doesn't matter if it's money, doesn't matter if it's physical provision, doesn't matter if it's health, if it's mental wellness, if it's relational forgiveness, a grace to accomplish a task, to fulfill an assignment, whatever that is, there is supreme abundance, but you cannot tap into that abundance outside of faith and trust. And this is, for me, where everything begins to crumble as it relates to the kingdom. Because it's heart-wrenching because I've seen it happen over and over and over again in the lives of believers. As we come with this gospel message, there's this invitation to experience the kingdom. You get free from Egypt, meaning you get out of your immediate situation. You come in the revelation that Christ has died for you and you've been raised with him. And then it gets revealed all of the things on the inside of you that have yet to be dealt with. And then so we take the mindset of Egypt into the promised land, and then we complain at God about why the promised land isn't fruitful. Okay. Well, that was good to me. And we start complaining and saying, God, I don't have enough. This isn't enough. Lord, you've told me to spend time with these people, but they're not getting it, and they're not living it, and they're this and they're that. And all of this stuff will rise up on the inside of you. Why? What is that an evidence of? The poverty mindset. You think you don't have enough. We're not confident that God is going to begin to supply our every need, every need. Whatever that is, you need more peace, you need more patience, you need more kindness, you need to learn how to have long suffering, you need self-control, you need joy, you need goodness, you need financial provision, you need spiritual breakthrough, you're tired of walking in anxiety. Listen, it's all available in the kingdom. But you can only sustain what the king releases by the currency of the kingdom, which is faith. Faith is what we use to broker what is being made accessible. It's so important that the scripture says it calls out one thing that if you don't have it, it's impossible to please God. That's right. God says there's something impossible to do, and this is what happens. He says, it's impossible to please me without faith. You can't even enter the kingdom without faith. You can't even get saved without faith. That's your one part, friends, is just to believe he is who he said he is. That's it. You do that part, which by the way is amazing. It says no one has faith apart from what God's given them anyways. So he gives you the thing you're supposed to bring to the table, which was his anyways. and you yield it to him as a recognition of who he is, and that positions you to receive what he has for you. But as long as we come first with this perspective of Egypt to God, then we're living from a place of poverty instead of a place of abundance. Anytime we start with our perceived lack instead of his ability to provide, lets us know where we're planted. And I don't know about you, but I believe God is taking us places, and there are things that God is calling us as a company of people to achieve and to accomplish. There's things he's calling you on a personal level to begin to do, and you can't function in that with this poverty mindset of this scarceness of there's not gonna be enough, or I'm not gonna be able, or God's not gonna show up. You're never gonna be able to get where God is taking you from that seat. We have to begin to allow ourselves to get repositioned in who God is. And in that place, we get permission to release our faith and activate our faith to now see everything we need is sustained by what God is able to do. It's not about what you can do, it's about what he can do. It's not about what's in your bank account, it's about what's in his. It's not about what the doctors say, it's about by his stripes, you were healed. It's not about the issue, and I'm not trying to diminish the weightiness of our challenge. I understand it's hard, but I can't get you where you're supposed to go by making this a giant. The only way I can get you where you need to go is for you to start seeing him for who he is. That was the whole purpose of taking the Israelites through their dependency upon manna, and why God would say after they took up too much, it would spoil. Why? What did I say earlier? Everything God gives you is to reveal who he is. You know, I've had conversations with people before about what's too much of something. You know, when is too much money too much money? When is that too much? When have we gone overboard? When is, you know, having provision or adequacy or skill sets or knowledge, when is it too much? And the answer I always give is this: it's different for every person in this room. But whatever will replace your trust for God is too much. For some of us, that's $50,000 a year, and for some of us, it's $500 million. Has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with trust. It has everything to do with your heart. Having $500 million is not an issue if that person's heart is consecrated with the Father's heart. Then they can be trusted with it. This is the whole parable of the talents. Do you understand? He gives one 5 talents, and 1 10 talents, right? And then in that entire process, the one who has 1 has a poverty mindset, and what happens? They see it scarce. They're like, I was afraid that you were gonna be harsh. And so what I did is I hid it, and I kept it tucked away. And then the one that had 5 and the one that had 10, they went on and they began to sow it and invest it the best they knew how, and they saw it double. And the master comes back in the parable, and the one who has 1, you know what he says? He says, you're wicked. And what you have is now gonna be taken from you and given to the other people. Why? Because he did not have faith and trusting to invest and sow what was already been given to him. Notice the talents were not theirs, it was the master's. Your skills, your abilities, your talents, everything you have in life that is good, it came from God. There is nothing good apart from him. Everything we have is his. So I wanna encourage you in this moment to begin to take a moment and just step out and say, look, I'm not trying to get you to have it all figured out and have the whole plan together right now. What I want to introduce you to is make a choice each day that today I'm going to allow myself to trust the Lord will provide. That he's going to show up for me. Because the only way you're going to begin to see this grow and develop in your life is to start stepping out and operating in the opportunities that God is bestowing before you. Our kids are learning how to ride bicycles, and they've been doing the training wheel thing for a while, and that's our bad. We hadn't taken as much time as we needed to. Okay, I'm done confessing. Anyways, We're teaching them how to ride bicycles. And one of the keys to riding a bicycle is balance. You gotta have balance. And do you know what I have found? It is, at least in my experience, impossible to teach them how to balance on a bike without being in motion. They have to go. And when they go, there is greater risk that the fall might hurt. They may misstep, but without them moving forward and having the risk, the perceived risk in the first place, they will never get to experience the joy of what it is to ride. And so the same thing with the Lord is, listen, if you want to begin to see God culminate this abundance in your life, in every area of your life, then the way that we have to begin to function is to go with the measure of grace he's already bestowed. I've said it this way before to some friends of mine. There is grace in the go. Why? Because you can't expect to get more of something until you release what he's already given you. But the poverty mindset says, I gotta store this away. I gotta stuff this away. I gotta tuck this back. I gotta keep this in reserve. And so you'll never invest. You'll never begin to pour out. Why? Because you're afraid of what's gonna happen when you do. So what happens is you come into a moment and you get encouraged about, maybe being a bold witness for Christ and sharing your testimony. We talked a little bit about that this morning, that God sets you free to set people free. Maybe that stirred you in a way and you're encouraged by that. And then what happens though is the poverty mindset will go, well, I can't pour that out because what if I pour that out and someone doesn't recognize and honors that and rejects me? How do I step out to the person at Walmart or in the grocery outlet parking lot? We had fun doing that. I think we passed out 350 meals yesterday. It was awesome. How do we step out and begin to have these conversations with people if we're afraid of being rejected? Right? That orphan spirit, that we need external validation to be internally solid and secure. But when you realize your Father in heaven has approved of you and you're carrying his message and you realize he's not rejecting you, it's just a rejection of him, that it's not about you, that your security is not about them validating you, it's found in the validation of his presence, then all of a sudden you get permission to step out with a Manna mindset of, Lord, I'm gonna step out in this moment and I'm gonna trust you that you're gonna provide in this moment what I need today. I don't know about tomorrow, I don't know about next week, I don't know about next year. My job right now is to give everything I have for you today. And Lord, I know you're gonna show up for me today because you said you would show up for me today. So if that has to do with giving of your time, it has to do with giving of your talent, it has to do with dealing with your treasure, if it's giving and being more generous, if it's showing up and saying, God, I'm gonna step out in this business venture, if it's God, I'm gonna change my career path, if it's whatever it's gonna be, Lord, I'm gonna try to stand up and be a better husband than I've ever been, I'm gonna be a better wife than I've ever been, I'm gonna try to be a better father. All of these things are impacted by how we view the character and nature of God. And whether we believe he's gonna show up for us today. But listen, when we come from broken homes and broken families and we've had bad job issues and this thing happened, that can't happen, before long, we've been so tainted by Egypt that the moment the Lord begins to bring us into moments where he is setting us free into a promised land, we take those ideas and ideologies and experiences and offenses and we live from those things. And so nothing that ever happens is enough. Was it a good day or a bad day? Right? It was all right. What has God done for you lately? And it's always smeared with these things that are half good and half bad. There's this disgruntled complaining thing that happens. Why? It's because we're living from an inferior reality instead of realizing the abundance that the Lord is giving us every moment of every day. So in closing, I want to read this to you. Exodus 16, 19 through 21. Moses said to them, let no one leave any of it over until morning. But they did not listen to Moses. Some left part of it till the morning, and it bred worms and it stank. There's two groups of people. Two groups of people in the camp. There's one group of people that are taking the opportunity to make the transition in the place of their heart, to not just get free from Egypt, but to allow Egypt to get out of them. Then there's this other group of people that though they got out of Egypt, They're still wrestling with keeping Egypt. And they're still trying to figure out how they're gonna protect themselves and how they're gonna keep everything right and how they're gonna provide for their families and how I am gonna move forward in this. Our sustenance, our abundance is found in a daily dependence upon God's presence. We can't expect yesterday's miracles to be our sustenance for today. Yes, we celebrate them. Yes, we remember them. Yes, we honor them. But it's not gonna get you through what God is trying to get you to. It's like, I got an older iPhone. And I don't know about y'all, but with my older phone, the battery tends to die more quickly than it used to. And what I have found is that yesterday's charge doesn't give me power for today's call. Yesterday's charge doesn't give me power for today's call. So there are experiences that we had yesterday, there are encounters that we had yesterday, there are amazing moments that we had yesterday. I could come up to here, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say I can give you dozens of encounters of people being healed, transformed, brought into the power of God's presence yesterday morning as we begin to do our outreach. And they're amazing things in their testimony, and they do have a measure of power with them. But I'm telling you, what I experienced yesterday isn't supposed to get me to next year. It ain't supposed to get me to next month. It ain't supposed to get me to tomorrow. What's supposed to happen is I'm supposed to come to the Lord fresh and say, God, I want to encounter you today. Lord, I know you've got new mercy for me today and I want it. God, I know you've got new manna for me today and I want it. See, Jesus said this is, we don't live on bread alone, but we live by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Realize this theme that's being tied in all of Exodus 16 is the charge that God gave them. And he told Moses, he said, when I do this for them, it's to challenge them and test them to see if they're gonna listen to my instruction. What was he saying? Is it ain't about food. It ain't about money. It ain't about the job. It ain't about the career path. It's about getting lives conquered and seated underneath the word of God. It's about realizing his love and his heart for you, that he desires to empower you and to provide for you. And it's never about the provision, but it's always about his presence. And when we learn to fall in love with his presence, we'll never lack for anything as it relates to provision. Why? Because we know he cares for us. See, this is what the Israelites were missing, is they heard about God, but they didn't know God. And so they were trying to step into something without a personal encounter. And some of us, we see things, we see God move, and we don't allow it to go from our head to our heart. Did you notice I told you about the two groups of people with the manna? I want you to notice that both of these groups saw the signs and wonders and miracles. Both of them saw the 10 plagues and God's provision. Both of them saw the Red Sea split. Both groups saw and drank of the water that was made right. Here's the difference, is one group of people saw God showed up and allowed that encounter to change their heart. The other group of people were comfortable watching God do his thing, clap and applaud and say, great job, God. And they didn't allow it to hit them here. And I'm gonna be honest, there's some of us in this room that have experienced the same thing. There's some of us that encountered the presence of God, and it's so changed us and it's made us new and it's given us permission to walk in the greatness that God has for us. And there's others in this room who have seen people encounter God. Maybe we've encountered God and we leave those encounters at the altar. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. But every encounter moment is an invitation for you to begin to encounter the very heart of God. I think for the Israelites, there were some that, maybe they were just trying to get out and they were not being very conscious of what was going on. It was an awareness issue. They did not honor appropriately what was happening. That's a thing. The other thing that keeps us from fully encountering what God's doing is this. Sometimes you're just so broken, and sometimes things are so undone, and you so had to guard yourself that the moment goodness comes up, you think, well, that's too good to be true, and you don't let yourself go there. And so we stay orphaned. We stay impoverished because this is what we know. See, a lot of times slavery is more easy because it doesn't require faith. And so we're okay with the pieces we know and we're acquainted with, but we don't want to step out yet because now this is an unknown territory we've never experienced, and I can't walk by sight. I can't walk by my emotions. I can't walk by what I observe. The only thing I can do is walk by what I know about the Father. And it's a totally different way of living. Stand with me.